Wow, it's amazing to have such a fabulous turnout, especially on such a chilly evening for the Lowveld. So I just want to say good evening, parents, guardians, Dr. Cook, Mr. Eisen, grade 9 teachers and tutors, as well as grade 9 scholars. It's a very exciting evening, so we thank you for being here. Tonight is another milestone in a long list of milestones that your children will pass through as they progress through the college. So I'm going to call on Mr. Eisen to open the proceedings for us. Thank you.
Good evening, one and all. I have prepared a speech. Honestly, that's it. I do have a tendency to overtalk. For those of you that know me, and obviously for the educators here at the college, because once I start talking about our students and our educators here, I just can't stop. So I'd like to first of all just welcome all of you for taking time out of your busy days to come in today, not just to talk to teachers, but also to receive feedback from Dr. Cook and also our Deputy Head of Academics, Natalie Jones, today. Before I begin, just like to thank our educators for the sterling work that they do. And I need my glasses to look far, but not to look at my little scribblings here. So I'll be doing this often. Little known fact, 40% of educators in South Africa will be retiring in the next 5 years. 40%. That's going to put a strain on the educational system going forward. Not just that, but with external markets from China, Russia, from Europe, from Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, Australia, coming in and recruiting educators, teachers are a scarce commodity. Committed teachers are even rarer. Judy, help me. So I've got Eisenisms. Those are words that don't exist, but they sound good. So I'd just like to thank our educators. We've got some phenomenal educators here. I'd like to thank Dr. Cook, revered educational psychologist in our area, and what she offers our school is not done at other schools in terms of the aptitude assessments and guiding our students in making the right choices going forward. I sometimes get lost in the detail of what I do at Penryn College and what we do at Penryn College. We are in the business of building lives. We are in the business of creating futures for our kids that they ordinarily wouldn't have. That's our role. That's our mandate. That is our passion. We have intentionally chosen the Independent Examination Board because it is well known globally and has been benchmarked with the Cambridge Examination Board. We had a conversation last year as to why were we moving away from possibly offering a dual curriculum. We do not need to offer a dual curriculum. I can say this hand on my heart as having a son go through a IEB school and having easily been placed internationally and has just completed his Master's in Fine Arts. I am proud that we are an IEB school. I am proud that we are able to place children around the world on the strength of the IEB qualification. But beyond that, we create good human beings. That, moms and dads, is what you want for your child. A good human being. The late Queen Mother of the Bafokeng Nation, Memohulu, always used to say to me, I'd go to her and say, Memohulu, we've placed a child over here, and Memahulu, we've got so many distinctions there. And she'll say to me, that's very good, Mr. Eisen, but character before distinction. Character before distinction. And it's been a guideline of mine, a guiding staff, because I see myself as a bit of a shepherd, that with character, we are able to get your children into the right career paths that speak to their strengths and their passions, and they become successful. And I want to thank Natalie Jones, who is, I wrote it here somewhere. Give me a second. There we go. She's not just our gatekeeper, but she's also the shepherd of the academic program at Penryn College. And through the interventions of Mrs. Liebenberg, who oversees student welfare, Mr. Date, student discipline, he often says, Mr. Date, can I quote you? Do not confuse, you're not going to say it. Continue. Do not confuse my character, my personality with my job. And often we have children who make bad life choices. It's not defining. It does not define their life. But they need to stand in their truth and walk a path of redemption. And I'm happy to say that our kids are good kids. They've got good hearts. They're competitive. The grade 9s are an extremely competitive bunch of students. So I'm really looking forward to being here for their journey for the next 3 years. After this year, obviously, yeah. I'm going to stop talking. Like I said, I try to make it short. Yeah, I think I've hit it all. Welcome. Please do take the advice of the educators. I recently went to go for a health check, and I was told I've got high blood pressure. No, high cholesterol, right, love? High cholesterol, and I should go on some tablets or whatever it is. And I was like, no, man, what for? I'm a teacher. And he said, well, I'm a doctor, so you follow what the doctor says. Folks, please listen to your educators. We're here for your kids. We're not going to steer them wrong. We want what's best for them. We're not going to put them under undue pressure. And sometimes, again, here I go down a rabbit hole, apologize. We often think that the be-all and the end-all is core mathematics and physical science for a child, but then it doesn't speak to their interests at all, or their passion, or what they want. But it looks good on a piece of paper to say that my child did core mathematics. Please talk to your child. Understand what speaks to their passion. I guarantee you they'll make a success of it. My son, my oldest, and here I go again down another rabbit hole, was extremely gifted with mathematics and physical science, and decided to drop subjects without my knowledge. He was at Cornwall Hill. And next thing I know, Connery is doing dramatic arts and what is the other one? I forgot what the other one was. Visual arts. No, he didn't do visual arts. Something else. And they stopped Connery when Connery wanted to drop Math Core for Math Lit. And all of a sudden, I said, who's signing the forms? I didn't sign any forms. And after a long conversation with Connery said, I want to be a graphic designer. I said, but you don't do visual arts. He said, yeah, but the art teacher says that they're going to help me put together a portfolio and I can apply to university. I want to be a graphic designer. You don't do visual arts. And he stood up, all 6'6" of him, of Connery, and, well, you tell me what I'm going to do with my life then. As a father, I had a quiet word. I said, please sit down quickly before I pick you up. And Connery sat down and expressed the passion for the art. And I said, okay, I'm going to support you. I'll send you to, what's the name of the university over here? It starts with a V. Not Vista. Which one? Vega. Thank you very much, Vega, to do graphic design. He said, no, but I want to go to America. And I was like, America? I can't afford America. I'll support you emotionally and spiritually. Long story short, in May, Connery graduated with his master's in fine arts and walked straight into a job and is happy and is successful. Spoke to Connery's passion. And sometimes we got to get out of the way and support our children, because ultimately it's their happiness that counts. If they're happy, they'll be successful. Allow the discipline. Let me do the discipline part. Well, myself and Mr. Date, he loves it. He does. He gets a different step in his walk when you see him on campus. Right, kids? Have you seen him? The arms start doing this, right? And you know he's on the job. I'm going to stop talking. Welcome. Enjoy the evening. And I'm going to hand over to Natalie Jones. Thank you.
You can see we complement each other well. I talk short. Ladies and gents, tonight we are very privileged to have Dr. Cook here this evening. I would like to say a very special thank you for offering up your time, for assessing the scholars, and to be here tonight to provide such invaluable feedback. I've been working closely with Dr. Cook for several years, and it's amazing how accurate her findings are. I've had many meetings with parents halfway through grade 10 into grade 11. My child must not change subjects, they must stick it out. And I'm like, what do you want to do? And then the child will say, and then I'll say, well, let's go and see what Dr. Cook recommended. She's spot on every time. So we are very privileged, and I would really like to thank you. And yeah, welcome, Dr. Cook.
I'm also going to try and keep it as brief as possible, but this is a subject, a topic that I'm really, really passionate about. So I will try my best, especially on this cold evening. The one thing I'm not used to is to standing at a podium. So the teachers who know me know I like to walk up and down. So that's out of my comfort zone this evening, but I will try my best to stand very still. But you can probably, by the end of the evening, guess what my personality profile is when I take you through yours. So welcome, everybody. Enjoy your reports. I hope that you use the information to inform the next stage of your schooling. And it should be an exciting one, one which should encourage you to engage in exploration. Career exploration should not start when you are in grade 11. It should actually start when you're in primary school. I often say to the children who see me, what do your parents do? They have absolutely no idea. And each year I have to educate myself about the array of careers that are out there. So it's very exciting. Use your holidays to do job shadowing. Companies are very willing to take you on. You just need to ask them. And please remember one thing, the content of what is in your reports this evening is what you gave me during that long morning when I assessed you. I didn't make anything up. I just spent the July holiday watching lots of sport. I didn't have a hot water bottle or a blanket around me because we've had beautiful weather until tonight. But I had lots of homework, and it was an absolute pleasure to put your reports together. So let's get started. I'm going to take you through them so that you understand the content and hopefully just shed a bit of light onto universities' requirements to just spark that interest in getting you to explore. So you will need to take a minimum of 7 subjects or learning areas in the senior phase of school, and they are grouped at Penryn into 3 different groups. You need to select 1 subject from each group, and you need to then obviously have your home language, a first additional language. The other compulsory subject is life orientation, and then your 7th subject is your choice between mathematics and mathematical literacy. So this first slide, I do conclude your reports with it as well. The first slide just gives you an indication of how we are grouping the subjects for 2025. I want to talk a little bit about the admission criteria for universities. Most universities, not all of them, work on an admission point score system. So what does that mean? It means for every distinction that you get, 7 points will be attributed to that. So it's anything above 80%. And then it goes down 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? Your points are allocated at most universities for 6 of your 7 subjects. Most of the universities don't give you points for life orientation, but be careful, some do. So I stand to be corrected, but Wits University, University of the Witwatersrand, give a maximum of 2 points. It might have changed, but just be very careful that if you are applying for a specific course, particularly if it's a select course, and by select course, I don't mean that it's a better course than another one, because what does better mean when we're talking about careers? One is not better than the other, it just means what suits you. But when I say select course, I'm referring to those courses where they have a restricted intake in terms of numbers. If you've got very, very good marks and then you're sitting with a poor mark in LO, it's not going to look good. So even if you're not allocated points, I do suggest that you apply yourself to all your subjects. But that is how the 7-point scale works. And if you go and look at the university's yearbooks, you will see in those yearbooks there are actually very few compulsory subjects at university. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. There are very few subjects which they are going to say, you need to have this subject for this course. But for every single course, there will be either an admission point score that you need to have met or a faculty point score, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So most of the universities, like the University of Pretoria, work on this APS system. And once you've chosen your subjects next year, you can start then seeing how many points you're getting to see what you actually qualify for. So the second type of system is the faculty point score. So for example, the University of Cape Town, they don't use an APS system, they use a faculty point score. They don't convert, for example, if you get 85% for English, they don't convert that to 7 points. 85% at the University of Cape Town would be 85 points. So each little percentage you get there adds up towards your overall FPS score. So their overall score, I think it's out of 600. So you just need to be aware of it. And why I like to talk about the different universities is I really would encourage you students and parents, don't be stuck on one particular university just because you maybe went there, especially if you're going to be applying for the select courses again. You need to apply everywhere. And you also need to see what is available. Like, for example, some universities now offer a business science degree. So what is the difference between a business science degree and a Bachelor of Commerce degree? So the business science degree is a little bit more mathematical. It is a 4-year degree, which means that you would graduate after 4 years with an honours. If you do a Bachelor of Commerce degree, you would do 3 years and then you would have to apply to do an extra year to get your honours. So I'm really trying to get you thinking and, more importantly, motivated about doing your research. And I am at the school most days. You're welcome to pop in and chat to me. And if the door's closed, which it often is, just knock and we can make a time. So that's the difference between the APS and the faculty point score. The first bit of information in your reports, so that's round about page 2 of your reports, would be an analysis that I made of your grade 9, and I only had the first term results available when I compiled your reports. So it's very, very important that you have a look at how you are currently achieving. So if, for example, you are sitting on about 40% for mathematics, then it does suggest that at the end of term 1, there was 60% of the work that you hadn't mastered. And you need to take that into account. If you are struggling with grade 9, term 1 mathematics, you need to be realistic and say, how are you going to cope with things like calculus, where it becomes even more abstract, or sequences and series, or trigonometry. So this just gave me an indication, and I'm thinking about maths because I used to be a high school maths teacher, so I'm also passionate about that subject. But be realistic. Every single year I have students who come to me who have selected the wrong subjects. They have not achieved in those subjects, and they have not qualified to go and apply for any course at university because their APS or their FPS score is too low. So don't do that to yourselves, okay? I've got quite a few students, probably 5 that I can think of at the moment, who've had to do a gap year or who have had to redo grade 11 and 12 subjects. So please, we need to bear these subjects in mind, but you're probably going to be very surprised when I say to you, the most important subject in terms of marks and points are your languages. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes why. Because every single course at every single university in this country, they are going to look at your marks in particularly your home language. Even a Bachelor of Commerce degree, most universities will say you cannot apply for it unless you've got at least 60% in English, because this is an English school. So I'll give you some examples in a minute. So don't underestimate it. When your teachers tell you to read more, they're not joking, and they're not just being pains. And every year, I can see who the students are who read. And you'll see it in a minute now when we get to your aptitude scores. I'll show you which ones tell me immediately. So just a word on mathematics and physical sciences. Statistically, these are the 2 subjects that the students perform the worst in across the board. And the reason is, often they are selected because, number 1, they are selected and the students don't have the ability to take those subjects. That wasn't a bat, was it? It was. We were always told that just be careful, they'll fly into your hair. So I always pictured it flying into this anyway. So getting back to the maths and the physical sciences, often chosen because the students struggle and then end up with poor marks and you're compromising your entire chances of getting into university, or because the students aren't interested in it. And you all have interest profiles in your reports. So we're going to go through that in a minute. So this is just 2 questions that parents and students ask me every year. Do I have to take mathematics to go to university? And the answer is no. And the second one that I'm going to emphasize in a minute is how important the languages are. I need to look at the screen for this. So I have to stand here because it's being recorded, so I'm just going to carry this with me. So if you look at the University of Pretoria Student Handbook, I mentioned earlier that there are very few compulsory subjects required at university. Do you notice something interesting about the BCom Accounting Sciences at the University of Pretoria? What do you notice? Is there accounting there? You do not need to have accounting in order to do a BCom Accounting Sciences. And I'm not saying accounting is not important. For some students it is, and they love it. But if you change your minds in grade 11 and 12 and decide you want to do accounting sciences, then best you have a really good mark in either English or your first additional language. You need to have 60% as a minimum. And then you will notice you need mathematics at 70%. And then I've given you the APS score of 34. Have a look at the computer science requirements. So BSc, Computer Science, Bachelor of Science faculty. Do you notice something there? You don't need information technology. You need to have a good mark in English or your first additional language, and mathematics at 70% and an APS score of 30. BA Law. Do you need to have mathematics? No, you can do a BA Law, and you just need to make sure, okay, here we go again, that you've got a good mark in English or your first additional language, and then you've got to make sure that you have an APS score of 34 points, calculated on 6 subjects. If you decide to do the Bachelor of Commerce Law, so because it is in the business faculty, then you will notice you need to have your mathematics. But if you do the BA Law, you don't need to have mathematics. University of Stellenbosch, I've given you a couple of examples there. So what I wanted to highlight, number one, it's just called management accounting. And they do look at your aggregate. So they'll work out your overall average. And then I've given you the requirements. And there you will see again, you don't need to have accounting. And if you do the conservation ecology one, there you will notice, because it's the Bachelor of Science in conservation ecology, there you have to do mathematics and physical sciences. And then the last one is the BA Law, and there you will see the requirements for BA Law, an aggregate of 70%, and so on. You don't need to have mathematics unless you choose economics as one of your subjects in the BA Law degree. So the moment you put in one of those business subjects, then you need to make sure you have mathematics. But can you see how much freedom it's giving you? And what's so fantastic about it, students, is it's actually encouraging you to have variety in your selection. So when my daughter, seeing that we're talking about children, was choosing her subjects, we said to her, choose what you like and have fun with it. And she chose mathematics, physical science, she had business studies, and she had visual art. Okay, and she's an engineer today. So variety is good, develops both sides of your brain. It's not for everybody. Okay, some students don't want to do the arts. But if it's there, parents, don't be afraid if I've recommended it. I've included Northwest University in my presentations that I've done at schools this year for the first time because I've been pretty impressed with them for two reasons. The one is I am so enjoying, and they're not paying me commission, by the way, but I really enjoy looking through their business faculty. They've got very interesting combinations of degrees. So, for example, if you do tourism, you can do tourism and marketing, which is quite unique because a lot of the other universities will just have a BCom marketing. The other nice thing about the University or Northwest Universities, you'll notice they offer what is called an extended Bachelor of Commerce in Financial Accounting. And guess what? It's the one university that will allow you to apply for that extended program with Maths Lit. So it does mean an extra year, all right? But it still gives you the option of pursuing a business degree. The other interesting thing I was told last week is that in 2027, they are going to have a veterinary science faculty and a faculty of medicine. So that is fantastic because, and I don't think it's just rumor. It's jolly hard to get into that veterinary science degree. It's only offered at the University of Pretoria, so it is so select. So we've got another option opening, which I think is really, really fantastic news for all the future veterinary science students in the audience this evening. Right, so in your reports, 3 lots of information. Aptitude scores, personality, profile, which is my favorite, I left the best for the end, and then your interest profiles. So the aptitude is looking at potential. So with further education, with further training, with further learning, where are you showing strengths? Is it languages? Is it more the spatial skills? Is it more, and I check things like your memory, and each profile is different, and I love putting them together. So if you look at test 1, test 2, and test 5, those often go together. And those are the 3 that tell me very often whether or not you read. Okay. The scores are given in terms of a STAY-9 scale. So STAY-9 meaning standard of 9, 9 being your highest and 1 being your lowest. 1, 2, and 3 would be considered below average. 4, 5, and 6 average, 7, 8, and 9 above average. So what do we mean by those descriptors, below average, average, high average, or above average? It means compared to the majority of people in your grade. If you average, that's where most of the students have scored. It's not bad. It's where we expect you to score. Okay? And then there will be a few that will get 7s, 8s, and 9s in different areas, and then 1s, 2s, and 3s. So test 1 is looking at your vocabulary. Test 2, looking at your verbal reasoning, how well you reason in language, with languages, how well you reason with words. And test 5, reading comprehension. And those 3 you need for every single subject at school and university. Often when children come to me and they're underachieving in mathematics and they've come for an assessment, and I'll say to the parents, what intervention have you put in place? The parents have sent them to master maths, and they've done Kip McGrath maths and extra lessons in maths, and we find out it's a language problem. Because maths is words before it is numbers. If you don't understand the mathematical problem, it doesn't matter what number you substitute or how you differentiate an equation. If you haven't understood the question, you are not going to get to the final answer. So we cannot underestimate the importance of those 3 skills. And if they are low, I suggest you start reading. And you all love technology, so why don't you maybe think of downloading, it's a free app called Mail Online. Mail, ladies, M-A-I-L, not M-A-L-E, okay? Mail Online. It's a free app. You download it, and why don't you, what's so nice about it, particularly for the teenagers, is it gives you the news across the world in categories. So if you love sport, you can go into the sports section and find out what's happening in the Olympics. But make a deal with yourself that that's where you're going to start reading more, and you will be using a device. And hopefully there you will transition to reading books and so forth. So remember it, Mail, M-A-I-L, Online, free app, okay? Non-verbal reasoning is looking at your ability to reason with shape, with form, with pattern, with design. That one often, not all the time, often goes with spatial visualization. What I mean by often goes doesn't really make sense. The two often correlate. So you often find that if students have scored high in non-verbal reasoning, they've done well in spatial visualization. So you remember, students, the spatial visualization was where I gave you things, cubes in 2 and 3 dimensions, and I asked you to rotate them in your head and give me the final outcome. So you need those skills, for example, in geometry, map work in geography, okay, visual arts. Those kinds of subjects require the non-verbal reasoning. Calculations is exactly that. And please don't look at your calculation score and say, well, it's a 1, I can't do maths. Mathematics is far more than addition and subtraction and multiplication, which is what I assessed in calculations. And they weren't allowed to use their calculators, parents. So it was all the mental maths, but mathematics involves, as I've said, languages, lots of reasoning skills, lots of spatial skills, and yes, at the end of a problem, you've got to add, subtract, and do all those mathematical operations. So I looked at all of those in terms of deciding whether or not I would recommend maths or maths literacy. And it's debatable. I know in the past we've had people on management and maths teachers saying you shouldn't be looking at core mathematics if you are currently under 60%. I get a bit concerned when it's under 50%. Mr. van den Berg, about 50%. All right, so if you're under 50%, it means that you're not mastering even half the content. Okay, so 50 for me is normally the cutoff, but then I go and look at the aptitude scores. Comprehension I've discussed. Comparison is, I think I also score poorly in this one because I can't edit anything that I write. It's your eye for details, your ability to work quickly, to work accurately. You need to have that kind of skill, for example, in a subject like accounting. Your eye for precision, for details. Spatial visualization, I've discussed. Mechanical insight, I definitely score a 1 here. The technical team's there because they know if they left anything technical to me, we wouldn't have sound, we wouldn't have a visual, and I would just be speaking without anything to guide me. So, mechanical insight, your ability to work with tools, equipment, machinery, and don't even give me a manual, because I started step 1 and then I jumped to step 5 and I've understood nothing in between. All right, and it's okay, I don't need it in my job. When I do need to find out something technical, I call on the IT department and they probably roll their eyes and think, here she goes again. It's fine. We don't have to be good at everything. So that's mechanical insight. And then memory. So this is a very important component, particularly in your learning subjects. So if your memory functioning is low, don't load your subject choice package with too many subjects that require you to remember factual information. Okay, so don't go and then choose life sciences, business studies, and history, as an example. All right? On the other end of the scale, if your memory functioning is very high, those of you sitting at 8s and 9s, just be careful that you're not relying too much on your memory and you're not studying properly. You cannot believe how many students come to me with issues, and I look at their memory functioning and I say, how do you study? I had a student last week who said, I don't. I said, what do you mean you don't? He said, I read through the work the night before. He's grade 10. So make sure that you've got a very good study method that taps into your preferred learning style. And if you couple that with good memory functioning, there's nothing stopping you. And you pay attention in class and you do your homework. Right, so I took all of those and I combined those 9 scores just to give you a little bit of some interesting reading. And underneath the table in your reports, I've grouped it into various career fields. So you can see, am I at the moment showing an interest in or not an interest, showing an aptitude or potential in the humanities, or is it in the technical field, or is it in the natural sciences, or is it in the, which one have I left out? There's another one, okay? So I've just given you that underneath the table. I've worked it out for each one of you so that you can already see where your potential lies. But we cannot stop at this point. As Mr. Eisen was saying, we've got to look further at what interests you, what is your personality, and that is the next section in your report, your interest profile. So the interest profile is probably the least reliable bit of information. And when I say it's the least reliable, I say that because our interests change all the time. Okay, and if you're a lifelong learner, they should develop right throughout your lifespan. So what I did, and I was really, really impressed with this year's group, because there was a trend developing where the students had very, what we call flat profiles in terms of interests. So there weren't many interests coming out. Believe me, I had some students who got like 1s for everything, which shows that they're not interested in anything. And then chatting to them one-on-one, I would say to them, what do you do in your spare time? And you can guess what they're doing in their spare time. I'm not even going to tell you, because I'm sure you know. It does involve technology, all right? So develop your interests, and parents, as I said right at the beginning, encourage the students to go and job shadow and see what's out there. Go to university open days. You don't need to be in grade 11 and 12. If you see an open day advertised, go and have a look. Okay, and maybe you'll get excited about a career, go and check the requirement, and then you know what you've really got to work towards. So the interest profiles this year were very, very interesting for me, because there were very few that were completely flat. And what I love to see in this profile is variety. So if there's sciences mixed with arts and mixed with business, those are the best profiles to put together. So those were the different fields or interest fields that you could have selected. And parents, it was a whole book of interest questions that I asked the students. And then I selected normally the 3 highest, and those are then reflected or indicated in your reports. And then the last one is the personality profile. The gurus in this field are our teachers, because I've done most of their personality profiles, and they've been to 101 workshops, and they know that this is my absolute favorite. Tomorrow I'm going to be facilitating a workshop with some of the prep staff in terms of their profiles and how well they work in a team. So think as well when I talk you through your profile of how that fits in the context of your homes, because it can often explain who gets along well with whom and so on. So the first index is whether you're an extrovert or whether you're an introvert. So you're either an E or an I. One is not better than the other. It just means you are different. Okay? And it doesn't mean if you're an E that you are loud, and if you're an I, you are quiet. It just means that extroverts get their energy from the world, from people, from places. They also like subjects that enable them to demonstrate or live out their extroverted personality type. And maybe they don't want to sit behind a desk with a laptop. Maybe they want to be engaging with other students or debating or critiquing. So that is an E for extroversion. And the introverts are the opposite. They generate their own energy. They put energy back into themselves. When they're tired, they don't want to go to the mall like your extroverts. They want to go home and maybe sleep or close the door and listen to music. One's not better than the other, but if you start thinking about the subjects, you will see certain subjects lend themselves better to certain personality profiles. The next one is whether you're sensing or intuitive. So this refers to how you take information in. Your sensing students are black and white. They like facts. Your intuitive students love ideas, come up with original ways of thinking about things. And the one example that comes to mind was a project, I think it was Mrs. Boyson or Mrs. Ferry gave to my daughter's class one year in visual arts. And they were shown 3 canvases, a red one, a green one, and a yellow one. And I must be careful because I'm going to forget what colors I just told you. I think it was red, green, and yellow. And they were shown these canvases and asked what they saw. Well, what do you think a sensing person would say? They take information in through their senses. They like facts. So they would say, Mrs. Boyson, I see 3 canvases. One is red, one is green, and one is yellow. Did I get the colors right? Okay. And what would an intuitive person say? No, hang on. In the red, I see anger. And in the green, I see nature. What was the other? Yellow. In yellow, I see sunshine and warmth, and I think of summer. And the sensing people are going, really? Is that what you see? Can you see the differences? And we need both in the world. But can you imagine a sensing person doing a subject that's very intuitive? They're going to end up being very frustrated, hating it, and probably not be motivated to do their best in it. The next one is thinking, feeling. So I think I started here 19 years ago. Mrs. Stapelberg, it was probably that long. And we did a workshop with the staff. And I used an example of a beached whale. So you're walking along your favorite beach and you come across a whale that's lying on the sand. And I said to the staff, okay, you've all got your profiles. What would you do if you saw the beached whale? And our natural science teacher in the prep, he said, he's a thinker, by the way. He said, I would look at the whale, I would estimate the size of the whale, I would organize a crane, I would get the crane to get the whale back into the ocean, job is done, and I move on. And our art teacher at the time said, I would keep the whale alive. And we said, how? And she said, I would take my blouse off and I would fan the whale and splash water on it. And all the feelings people were going, oh, shame, the poor whale. And it was Mr. van Rensburg, and he doesn't mind me telling you. He said, are you kidding me? You're going to stand there splashing water on the whale? I will organize the rescue party. So there are definitely subjects that will lend themselves more to one than the other. So thinking as opposed to feelings. And then the last one is the JP, judgment perception. And interesting again, we're getting quite a balance. We went through a stage where the one was dominating here, and I don't know what it is. I'd love to research why. We're getting quite a balance with this particular scale. But the perception students in this room, if you got a P for perception, how many perception students in this room are wearing a watch tonight? Not one. So, perception students, they are laid back. Spontaneous, they go with the flow. They've got diaries, or they had diaries. They're somewhere collecting mold, growing stuff. Could be a science experiment. You see, they're agreeing with me. Okay? So far more laid back, spontaneous, go with the flow. Judgment people, the opposite. Okay? We love structure. We plan our day. We wake up in the morning, we know exactly what the day entails. I'm a terrible Jay. I left my diary in my drawer in my office the other day, and I had to phone Mrs. Arujo. She said, hi, what's wrong? I said, can you take a photo of what's in my diary for the next day? And she had a good laugh because she knows me. So Jays are very structured, very organized, very methodical, but remember I said one's not better than the other. Pros and cons. Do we get tension headaches? Everybody down my passage knows. You got a tension headache, you go to the psychologist for a Miprodol because she's got them in her handbag. Okay? Perception students, far more laid back, spontaneous, go with the flow, but you've got to watch your time management, your organization skills. So if you get a project and the project is due in 3 weeks, the J's focus on the 3 and the perceptions say 7 times 3 is 21. So we've got 21 days, we don't need to worry about it. And what happens on day 20? And the parents are then stressed. So again, one's not better. We can learn from perception people. We can learn to relax more. We just put relaxation time into our diaries. Okay? And perception people, this, especially if you feel as a perception student that you don't have a good study method, and your memory functioning isn't great, then I would really urge you to look at how you are studying and to maybe, attend a course. And we've got a fantastic occupational therapist, and I promise you, she doesn't pay me commission. She did a talk, am I right, with our science students not long ago. She is phenomenal. Okay, in terms of study methods and study habits. All right? So that is your personality profile. You've got 4 letters in your profiles and a paragraph underneath that. I typed up a paragraph for you, and you will see in the paragraph, I talk a little bit for some of you about careers already. So have a look at that. I then took all that information for every single one of you. I drank lots of rooibos tea. And I then made a selection. And I said, okay, should this student be considering number 1, mathematics or mathematical literacy? And then I looked at group 1 for you, I looked at group 2, and I looked at group 3, and I made a selection. Most of you have got 3 subjects I've recommended. Some of you, I might have put in a 4th one, and then you have to choose 3 of the 4. It is a recommendation. It doesn't mean you have to take them. But please remember, especially parents, it's based on what your children have told me. Your teenagers. I'll correct myself quickly. What your teenagers have told me. Are there any questions? I think that's the last one. Yeah. Any questions on the content of your reports? University yearbooks are easy to go and find. You just go into the university's websites and you look at the undergraduate programs. Is that it? Then I'm going to thank you for your time. I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Jones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cook. I always love listening to her because I always laugh, because when I did my personality assessment last year, I gave her my form. She said, I don't even need to look at what you filled in because I know what your mark's going to be like, and I don't have any grey areas. It's all black and white. So, as she said, not wrong, just different. So thank you very much, Dr. Cook. So I'm sure at this point in time you all have a lot that you need to go and ponder and think about, and it's a lot of information overload. So just to close off this evening, I'm just going to talk about the subject choice forms. You will be getting the link tomorrow, and some of the restricted subjects, just to avoid any confusion as we go into it. So when we talk about restricted subjects, we again are not necessarily talking about better or worse subjects. We are just talking about subjects that have prerequisites in order to take them. Some of them have got different reasons, and so we're going to look at each of them. I have been sending out emails and communicating with you throughout the year to tell you what's coming, what's going on with regards to subject choices, so that these prerequisites do not come as a surprise. So the first subject I'm going to look at is music. And I know we have an amazing grade 8 to 9 music teacher. Mr. Bana is sitting here this evening, and he's doing amazing work with the grade 8s and 9s. But we need to just be cautious here when it comes to music as a subject, because a lot of us romanticize music and we think it's playing the marimbas and it's singing beautiful songs. But in actual fact, as a school subject, music is quite different. So going from grade 10 upwards, it requires a scholar to be able to actually play a musical instrument from music. So you have to be able to read music, you have to be able to interpret music, and you have to be able to get that out. You also have to be able to play or sing at a certain level. So this requires that solid foundation as well as practical training. So this is not a case of you can pick up a guitar and you can make music, or you can sit at the drum kit and you can have a jam session with your friends. Okay, so this is where we're talking about classically trained, you are able to do the music. So in order to take music in grade 10, you need to have at least what is called a grade 3 certificate in both a practical and a theory component in both or either voice or a musical instrument. This has to be through one of the internationally recognized music schools, such as Royal Schools of Music, Trinity Music, or Rock Schools. So some of you, or probably most of you, are sitting here going, this teacher's lost her mind, she's talking nonsense and talking about grade 3, we're all in college, grade 3 happened a long time ago. So just be aware that the music grading system is quite different. It is an international system, and if you are actually achieving these, you would know what we're talking about. So please do not select music if you do not meet these criteria. If you select music as a subject, you will need to submit certificates as evidence of the fact that you have completed the required prerequisite levels in order to take music. Secondly, dramatic arts. wow, we've had an amazing year with dramatic arts, and we have an amazing dramatic arts department. And there are misconceptions. I think a lot of parents, certainly, you think about dramatic arts, about swanning around, putting on shows, but in reality, it's actually a lot more than that. It focuses on helps scholars to build their confidence, as well as the ability to express themselves. It also delves into the background of dramatic arts, like lighting effects, etc. Dramatic arts requires scholars to have an excellent grasp of the English language. So in here, we're not talking about somebody who can just read and write. You really need to be able to grasp the English language. You need to be able to read, memorize, recite lines. This is a critical skill. We also only have a limited space in dramatic arts. And so for this reason, when you get the subject choice form, the link tomorrow, you'll see if you select dramatic arts, it's going to take you into another page and it's going to say select another subject. And you're going to be like, I don't want to take another subject, I want to take dramatic arts. Okay? This is so that we have the backup. There are only 20 spaces available in dramatic arts. And if we have more than 20 scholars who select dramatic arts, there will be a selection process. This will be based on English results as well as attendance record. Now you're going, attendance? What does that have to do with my marks at school? The problem with dramatic arts, or not the problem, one of the big factors with dramatic arts is a lot of the work involves group work. Okay? How many movies have you seen with one actor? No? Plays? Okay? There's always a lot of moving parts. And so when you have group work and you have a scholar who is regularly absent from school, it impacts on everybody else in the group, and it's not fair to them. So these are factors that will be looked into, and you will be notified of whether you've got into dramatic arts or not. And so if you did not get in, your second choice is the option that you will get. The next subject is information technology, and this subject delves into the world behind the hardware and the software that we as the end users see and work with on a daily basis. Scholars work with coding, and this requires unique problem-solving skills, analytical skills, as well as attention to detail. Scholars who are strong mathematically tend to flourish in this subject. The minimum requirement to get into IT or to do IT in grade 10 is 55% for your mathematics June examination, not your June term mark. Okay, so we need to see, how do you cope under pressure? How do you cope in an examination environment? So again, for IT, should you select IT, make sure you have already got 55% for your June exam for maths. Otherwise, please don't select it. If you do, you will be taken to a page where you have to make an alternate selection. This 55% has to be maintained through to the end of the year. So again, if at the end of the year you do not meet that 55% in mathematics, we will go with your second option. Okay, so this is not to break you guys down, but to encourage you. If this is what you want to do, go for it, but work for it. Work very hard for it. The last of our restricted subjects is physical sciences. And as Mr. Eisen alluded to, and Dr. Cook mentioned, it's a touchy topic. Okay? There's this idea that without physical sciences, the doors are closed. And I don't know if you noticed on Dr. Cook's presentation, there was only one course that she showed in her entire presentation for which physical science was a prerequisite. It does not close the doors that you think it does. And I think we also need to remember that if you struggle with a subject at school, the odds of you going into a career on which that subject is your basis is very slim. If you take physical sciences and it is a prerequisite, you'll see it is never below 50% as a prerequisite. So if you take physical sciences and in matric you scrape through with a nice 45% for physical sciences, it doesn't open a single door for you. In actual fact, it brings your APS score down if you were to take another subject and get a nice 60% for it. Please think very, very carefully about this. Physical sciences from grade 10 consists of 2 subjects, chemistry and physics. And in all other countries in the world, physical sciences is split between physics and chemistry, and you can actually choose one or the other. South Africa, you do both. But the interesting part, when you get that IEB certificate at the end of matric, it is equivalent to having done both those subjects individually. You do 2 full curriculums in the space of 1 subject. There is no time from beginning of grade 10 to ensure that scholars have the necessary mathematical skills. We don't have time in class to go and show you how to cope with the rigors of the physical calculations. We don't have time to work through the ratios involved in chemical reactions. And for this reason, there is a non-negotiable requirement of 60% minimum for mathematics in your June examinations. Again, this must be maintained at the end of the year. So when you get the link, again, don't be surprised when you have to choose an alternative. I promise you, if you hit that target of 60% for maths, you will be doing physical science next year. Okay? So don't go, oh, I've had to choose another one, I'm not going to be able to do it. It's just so that we have the backup and that you have it in place. Okay? Again, please remember that this is all about your future. Okay? Parents, it's about your child's future. It's not about your missed opportunities. It's about what they want to do and what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. I know my parents wanted me to do certain things, and I just did not do what they wanted me to do because we are different people. And today, I can tell you that they're proud of where we've gotten to. Right, so with regards to subject choices, I'm talking about this. So just to let you know, the link will be sent out via email and WhatsApp tomorrow. Please only fill in 1 form. So scholars, okay, please contact mom and dad or your guardian, house parent, to help you fill in the form. Don't fill in a form for a scholar and mom fill in a form and dad fill in a form and hostel parent fill in a form, please. Okay? 1 form per scholar. Please read the instructions carefully, fill in the correct details. If you have any questions or queries, please feel free to contact me. I will be available to assist and help where necessary. The grade 9 tutors are also willing to assist wherever necessary. So I just want to thank you again for coming out and for your time, for being here, and we really appreciate it. If you've got any questions, feel free. I will be available afterwards. Thank you very much.